You know the face. Of course you do. It's on the $100 bill, right? It's become this symbol of American smarts and, our founding ideals. But the real guy? Oh, he was so much more complex, so much more fascinating than any single picture could ever show you. We all learn it in school. Benjamin Franklin was a founding father. And yeah, that's true. But just calling him a founding father is kind of like calling the entire ocean a big puddle. I mean, sure, it's not wrong, but it misses all the incredible, mind-blowing stuff happening just beneath the surface. Okay, just look at this list for a second. Writer, scientist, inventor, postmaster, diplomat, statesman, and then, late in his life, a really passionate abolitionist. This guy wasn't just wearing a few different hats. He was basically running an entire hat factory all by himself. He was a polymath, in the absolute truest sense of the word. So that brings us to the big question, doesn't it? How on earth did one person manage to do all of this in just one lifetime? What was his secret sauce? Well, the whole story really starts back in his youth. It's a story of how he went from being a runaway apprentice to a completely self-made man. Try to picture this, okay? You're 17 years old, you've run away from your job, you're technically a fugitive, and you show up in a brand new city with almost nothing in your pockets. This is not some story about a guy who inherited a bunch of money or had all the connections. This is about someone who built his entire world from scratch, pretty much just on pure grit and ambition. And check this out. This quote tells you everything about his mindset, even when he was just a kid. At 16 years old, 16, he was secretly writing under the name of a middle-aged widow, Silence Dogood, and he's already talking about freedom of thought and freedom of speech. I mean, years before the revolution was even a whisper, he got that these ideas were the absolute bedrock of a free society. And here's the thing that's so key to understanding him. He didn't just hope he'd be successful. He literally engineered a plan for it. He started a club called the Junto, which was basically a support group for guys who wanted to better themselves. He started the first ever subscription library, so people like him could actually get their hands on books. He even made a list of 13 virtues, like being frugal and industrious, that he would track every single day. He was his own life's greatest project. So this personal drive he had, it didn't stay personal for very long. He pretty quickly started applying that same energy to the world around him, and he became this incredible community builder and an unbelievably practical inventor. You see, he didn't just live in Philadelphia. He actively built it. The first volunteer fire department, that was Franklin's idea. The first hospital in the American colonies, yep, Franklin again. The school that would eventually become the University of Pennsylvania, you guessed it. The man saw a problem, and instead of complaining or waiting for somebody else to fix it, he just got people together and created a solution. And that right there is the key to his genius. It wasn't about floating in the clouds with some abstract theory. It was always about solving real, everyday problems for actual people. In fact, he never took out a single patent on any of his inventions because he believed that these ideas should be shared freely and generously with everyone. And just look at the ridiculous range here. On the one hand, you've got him charting the massive Gulf Stream current in the Atlantic to help ships travel faster. And on the other hand, he's redesigning the common fireplace, creating the Franklin stove, just to help people heat their homes a little better. I mean, from the enormous to the everyday, if it was a problem, he was on it. And then, of course, you have the famous kite. And no, it wasn't just some crazy daredevil stunt. It was a very specific, targeted experiment. He had a theory. Lightning is a form of electricity, so he flew the kite to prove it. And the second he was proven right, he immediately turned that knowledge into something practical, the lightning rod, an invention that saved countless homes and lives. But his influence wasn't just going to stop at the city limits. Franklin's problem-solving mind eventually had to take on the whole world stage, which turned him into first a reluctant revolutionary, and then America's greatest diplomat. Decades, we're talking decades before the Declaration of Independence, Franklin was already pushing for the colonies to unite. This cartoon, Join or Die, was actually first made to rally the colonies against the French, but its message was so simple, so powerful, that it came roaring back as a symbol of freedom during the Revolution against Britain.
And this is a really crucial transformation to understand. When he first went to London, Franklin was a loyal Brit. He was arguing for colonial rights, sure, but he wanted to do it within the British Empire. It was only after he was publicly humiliated by British officials that something snapped. He became a full-blown champion for independence. And in Paris, as an ambassador, he pulled off the diplomatic miracle of securing the French alliance that we absolutely needed to win the war.
And you know what? He did it with his own unique style. He showed up at the super formal French court and just ditched the powdered wig, wearing a simple fur hat instead. The French went crazy for it. They saw him as this brilliant, down-to-earth genius from the New World. His charm was probably as powerful a weapon as any cannon. So in his final years, Franklin really cemented his legacy. He wasn't just a player in the Revolution. He was a true architect of what it means to be American. Get this. This fact just blows my mind. Franklin is the only founding father who signed all 4 of the key documents that created the United States. That's the Declaration of Independence, the treaty with France, the peace treaty with Great Britain, and the U.S. Constitution. He was there for the whole ride, from the very beginning to the very end. This also shows his amazing capacity to grow and change his mind. Now, his history with slavery is complicated. He did own enslaved people earlier in his life, but his thinking evolved, and he came to see it as an atrocious debasement of human nature. And in his final public act, he used his fame to petition Congress to end slavery for good. You know, he always had a sense of his own place in history, even as a young guy. When he was just 22 years old, he wrote this incredibly clever epitaph for himself. He compared his body to an old book, hoping the work inside wouldn't be lost, but would come back in a new and more perfect edition. It's pure Franklin. Witty, a little humble, but so hopeful. And yet, after that whole extraordinary life, after all the achievements, this is his actual gravestone. Incredibly simple. No list of titles, no mention of his accomplishments, just Benjamin and Deborah Franklin. In the end, it all came down to that simple human connection. So, I'll leave you with this question to think about. When you consider his whole sprawling legacy, the scientist who tamed lightning, the writer who shaped a country's character, the diplomat who won a war, the community builder who gave us libraries, which piece of that amazing legacy do you think we need the most right now?